Having a lazy Saturday, but let's get something done for our boosted K24 project. So I need to make some grounding for our block to chassis, and it's going to require a little bit of a custom setup. We're building this thing in a way where the engine goes in and out real easy. So, it's simple enough to just have a wire going right from engine to chassis, but then you're unbolting it from the back of engine, and it can be tight to get in there. So we're going to build it as a two-piece design, using a couple of these little, I want to call them like a spade, not connector, but spade like pedestal flange piece thing. And we got some heat shrink, X-Acto knife, and the one tool you're going to need is this little crimper device. And it's the type of thing you don't want to buy, but you'll find you're using it way more often than not. So let's get into it and build a little grounding harness. So first off, I've got 6-gauge wire. We want to be able to carry a good amount of current from block into chassis. And I like to use this silicone coat wire because it's real bendy, because we might snake this through some tight spaces on the engine. Using a copper strand, tinned copper strand, reasonably cheap. You don't need to do like oxygen-free copper or anything like that, but it's nice to have a little bit of corrosion resistance, and likewise stainless on your crimp connector. So first thing, we're just going to cut away a little bit of our shielding with the X-Acto knife and expose enough to crimp on. I'm just gently rolling it along the knife blade because I don't want to cut into the stranding. Check if we got enough depth here. Okay, it's gonna work. I gotta just squeeze that tight in order to slip it in. There we go. Couple kick it out outside isn't too big of a problem. So next we got our double wall heat shrink, and I'm just gonna bend that in half, roughly in half, get a little crease, just a bit of a mark, and then from there cutting it straight across. And if you're lucky, you can fit it over the whole thing, but rather than struggling with that with heat shielding generally, you're sticking that on your wire before you're completing your connection, be it solder or crimp or whatever. It gives me another chance to kind of roll these strands up nice and tight. Next, we're going to do our crimp. So, not much to the tool. It's just a large pair of pliers, basically. And it comes with multiple sizes. So you just press in the little button, and you can rotate to select your bigger and smaller sizes. And in this case, we're just going to go with something that is going to crimp on the diameter of our fitting. And I may have to crimp it twice, so big size and small. But let's give this a shot. and aiming to get the actual pressure of the crimp not at the very edge of the crimp barrel. You want it right in the middle. So that didn't give me very much resistance. I think I gotta crimp it a little smaller, but let's take a look. All right, it actually didn't do anything at all. It barely touched it. So next smallest size. Let's give that a go. All right, that felt like it had some pressure to it. And now we've got a nice crimp. So test that it's not pulling out. Nice strong connection. I think we are good here. So making sure it's not rotating on the wires or anything. I think that's nice and secure. So I prefer to use a heat gun for this, but we're gonna rock the lighter. But I basically like to line up the shrink right where it's gonna pull down on this kind of beveled section. Give it a nice glued seal there. And then just hitting it with some gentle heat. Making sure to move. You can easily burn this stuff with a lighter, but if you're kind of quick, looking at the parts that need shrinking, all right, that feels solid. And then the engine heat will also tighten it up a little bit. So you don't have to be absolutely perfect. Just get it nice and snug. First, let's take a look at what we're dealing with here. So we got our engine harness going all the way down to ECU side. And then everything has been collected. So there's like 4 or 5 wires in there. They're all collecting to a common ground point. And we've got one of those kind of spade flange pedestal bolty connector things there. So what I've done is prepared a mounting point for grounds, kind of hidden out of the way. We've got an M6 bolt here, some copper washers pinching it. We're going to run our engine harness up to that point, and then we're going to build from there a ground kind of under the engine harness. And in this case, I think it's going to go up underneath our engine mount bracket. And then I'm going to sneak it maybe behind and right to here. I may have to go through the front. We'll see. But we are going to build a common point right here for that ground to meet. And then we will make a second wire from this point over to chassis. And the reason there's 2 wires is because I want to be able to unbolt that ground right here, lift it out of the way, unbolt my one nut on the engine mount, and then lift the whole engine out of the car. So here's where that silicone sleeve on this wire comes into play. So nice and flexible, we can run it wherever we want. Gonna go with right up there. I think that's going to be our final kind of destination. That's all we got to do. Use a pen to make a mark on where we want to cut. And now I'm going to take it back off and crimp on the other side. So we got our mark right here. And it doesn't have to be super exact on this one because there's a bit of slack in it. But we're basically going to take our large cutter, lop the wire in half, and then quickly do that same process to crimp on another fitting. And the only thing that I'm going to be hyper vigilant about for this side is the heat shrink. So that goes on right away. Because once you get your second connector on, there's no way to get that heat shrink on. Couple of strands there, let's try that again. A lot of those the strands are getting knocked off by just simply pushing them down from the top with the fitting. There we go. Looking good. Your heat shrink positioned. Ready to go. So here's a half finished product. We got all the grounds collecting with the block. Got the paint polished off behind that bolt. And then it's coming up right over here. Just collecting with a second wire, and that will go right down to chassis somewhere. So what I'm going to do is take this piece off. We'll transplant that into chassis and then just measure how long we need this guy. Give it a little snip. The other major ground is on the front of the block. Typical ground location and integrated into our charge harness. And that all comes up to a single high volt connector, which clips right into our battery relocation. Here's our mounting piece in its proper location and chassis. And all I've done is make a little mount right there. And we're just going to mount that guy right there. So that's going to do it today on a little ground wire cleanup. And hopefully that gave you guys some ideas on how to tuck wires and, make custom grounding points and stuff. So if you like the video, let me know. As always, like and subscribe.